The Celtics are now favored to win the title next season, according to FanDuel. They just signed Danilo Gallinari. They're expected to sign him. And they traded for Malcolm Brogdon. They traded Daniel Tice, Aaron Nesmith, Nick Stauskas, Malik Fitz, Juwan Morgan, and a 2023 first-round pick for Brogdon.
Juwan who?
Juwan Morgan.
Oh, okay.
Now,
Indiana.
do you think that these two moves make them the favorites to win a championship?
Yeah, it definitely puts them in the East front. See, free agency is so tough because you want to wait to see what the Bucks do. You want to wait to see what Miami does.
But we got to do a job.
Yeah,
you know
that's why I said I got to do it. So I'm just going to talk from the East. I don't think this puts them over the Clippers. I think getting John Wall was huge. I still think top to bottom, the Clippers have a better roster. I got to give the champions, the Warriors, some respect. So I still have them over. But talk about just in the East. I think they are right now, as of today, the front runners. Now, I still want to see what Milwaukee does with the rest of their role players. Their role players were pretty underwhelming against the Celtics. I want to see them add a couple more guys that are better. Wes Matthews is really old. I don't know if he can maintain being that second defender next to Drew Holiday. I want them to get a little bit more depth. Miami, we're still waiting to see if they can get another score. If they get another score, this is a different conversation that we're having. I don't think right now they're built to beat Boston, especially now that Boston just improved. But I think if Miami gets like a Beal or a Donovan Mitchell, this is a conversation that we can definitely have where Miami looks like they can be better than Boston. Philly, I think they made really great moves. Melton, PJ Tucker, but like we keep talking about, it's up to Harden. It's dependent on Harden. If Harden becomes different, then it's a different conversation. So right now,
it's good to see you back on Harden's bandwagon.
With Brogdon being that playmaker that they need, a guy who can space the floor, be a playmaker, 6'5", can guard 1, 2, 3. Now he can be a role player, which I always thought he was, a role player. Now you got him, Danilo. I think this is a team that can definitely – this is the front runner right now as of today in the East.
Let me just say that little quick I always thought he was a role player. That was unnecessary. That was unnecessary.
Everything's
his most recent season, yes, it was his most underwhelming in a couple of years, but – this was shooting-wise, efficiency-wise. Years prior, we saw him be in that 37 to 39% from three, where this past season, I think
his problem is only health.
No, for sure. This past season, he only played 36 games, still averaged 19 points, 6 assists. Malcolm Brogdon was a very, very good addition for the Boston Celtics because what you look at the Celtics and see is that they need a true point guard that can facilitate. Now, Marcus Smart did a good job of filling that or completing that job. However, he's not a true point guard. He's not the best facilitator. Sometimes he's a little erratic with his play, and it halts the Boston Celtics offense. Malcolm Brogdon can have a control of this offense and start to see Jason Tatum and Jaylen Browns in their spots and get them going. And also, he can consistently hit a shot. You can actually rely on Malcolm Brogdon. If you need him to get a bucket for you, Malcolm Brogdon can do so. And you mentioned how he's going to be a role player, which he is. He's going to be the sixth man for them. He could arguably be in the running for sixth man of the year next season.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to go as far as say championship favorites. 100%, both teams you listed, you have to give respect for. The Clippers are going to come in. They're going to be a great team. It's all dependent on Kawhi Leonard's health for sure. And Golden State, you have to give the champions their respect as the champions. So you can't put another team, especially the one that just lost to them, over them. But in the Eastern Conference, it's all dependent on. You mentioned Beal, you mentioned Donovan, but it's also dependent on Kevin Durant. If Kevin Durant makes that move to Miami...
Well, I think he's going out west, that's why. So.
Which I don't doubt. I think the Nets don't want to see a Eastern Conference team have Kevin Durant. But if the package is there and that's the best one available, then maybe they decide to make that move. But it is dependent on Kevin Durant. If he goes to Miami, that's one you automatically have to look out for. That Jimmy and KD pairing would be one to... That you want to talk about duos... That could jump to the top of the Eastern Conference.
It might be, but like this league is so role player dependent. What's the other guys gonna look like?
So let's think of a Miami trade off the top of my head. It's probably Bam, Tyler Hero, 3 to 4 first round picks. Maybe
I don't even think the money works. You got to add something else.
Stop right there. Take Bam out the conversation. Bam doesn't work because league rules. Bam can't be a part of this trade.
So then Ben Simmons has to go. Something like that. Something weird has to happen with the money.
Miami doesn't have a trade package.
So.
That's what I said. Miami's ain't KD.
They can't even trade first round picks because they can't trade them in consecutive years.
All right, so then fair enough. Then my whole spiel just gets thrown out the window. But I'm fine with that, right? So now let's live in that scenario. The Beal, the Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell seems to be the most realistic one. That's one that Donovan Mitchell comes in and they immediately fill the void of what they need. A true number 2 scorer that you can rely on consistently.
You think he's the number 2? I think he's the number 1 scorer there.
I think Butler's the leader, but
Fair
Mitchell
enough.
is the number
Yes,
one guy.
I agree with that statement. I just think of how dominant Jimmy Butler was this postseason. When he needed to take over a game, he was able to, which is why I paid him that respect. And Jimmy Butler's a top 10 player. Donovan Mitchell, top 15.
Mitchell's a better scorer than him, though.
I agree. Especially if he has a number two or I keep saying number two, but another option that he can rely on. Jimmy is a facilitator. He'll be able to get Donovan involved in that sense. But
Jimmy's game, he'll let Tyler Hero cook if he needs to.
No doubt. But that's the thing. He wanted Tyler Hero to cook. Tyler Hero couldn't cook. Donovan, you can put that trust in. So as of right now, where we stand, you mentioned it perfectly. We got to do a job. As of where it stands right now, I'd have Boston coming out of the East. But title favorites, I don't know.
Absolutely not. No way. No chance.
The 76ers with an all-NBA James Harden are going to the NBA Finals.
James Harden winning the league MVP too.
He has to. That's the only way that I can buy in.
I would love to hear this.
Title favorites, of course not. The Clippers are the best roster in the NBA. If they don't win a championship, or at least if they don't get to the conference finals,
Stinky.
That's a bigger failure than the Nets.
Agreed.
I stamp
Agreed.
that.
I agree.
stamp
I
that.
agree. I agree.
Without a doubt.
Wait. You said if they don't make it at least the East
To the conference finals.
Okay.
That's a bigger failure than the Nets.
I thought
I disagree.
Well, I mean, as long as they don't get swept in anything, they'll be okay.
Because you know what? At the minimum, the Clippers made the Western Conference Finals with their best player hurt. At the minimum.
They faced the Jazz, bro.
Didn't Jalen Brunson plays with Jazz?
And you prop him up to
different.
Like this guy,
there's no
you're
different.
so
There's
narrative
literally the same
based.
thing.
You're so narrative
Same thing.
based.
Actually, the Jazz were better than
So
the Clippers.
So hold up. So you're giving
They were
Paul
the best
George
team in the NBA
You're
that
giving
year.
Paul George credit for beating the Jazz. Then
I do give Paul George credit.
because
deserves
I
that.
haven't heard you praise Jalen Brunson once for his performances
What you
against
mean?
the Utah. Whenever we mention Jalen Brunson performances, you say, "Oh, it's against the Jazz."
No,
But Paul
no,
George
no,
gets
no,
propped
no,
up.
no,
It was different then.
no.
It was
It's
different
'cause
then.
you like to
Jazz
bring-
were the number one seed in the NBA. In the
It's the same roster.
No. It's because you like to
It's the
bring up his
same roster.
21
It was
game
basically
sample
the same
size.
roster.
That's what I like. That's what you like.
It's
to
the
bring
same
up.
roster, but Utah didn't have Mike Conley. Literally for that series.
Nah, Utah. Conley played the
last
couple
game
games.
on a bad hamstring, but he didn't play. Mike Conley at least was guarding Brunson, and Brunson gave him the business. I don't want to hear
He's
that.
getting guarded by a 40-year-old cook, Mike Conley.
that you wanted to trade for. Ben
Cook that
Simmons.
you prop PG up. Look, I'm talking about
You
the
said
Celtics
Mike
right
Conley
now.
and Chris Paul on the same level at one point in your life. You did say that. I've never said that in my life.
Chris Paul in the playoffs looked like it.
Oh my
Looked like it. But look, Boston made good moves. I think Gallinari gives them another shot creator, although is he a fit for what they do defensively? I don't think so. Malcolm Brogdon's a good player, but it's just injuries with him. He's always injured. You can book it for him to miss at least 30 games in a year. But now that he's not a lead guard and
He
he
doesn't need
can,
to play a lot.
he
So
can,
perfectly said.
take games off, load management.
Minutes restrictions. There's not
need
as
him for the
much
playoffs.
expectations. 100%.
This is the perfect situation for him, but last year he did deal with Achilles injuries and a hamstring injury, maybe because he's out of shape. I don't know. It's probably why it led to the hamstring thing. But
Crying.
Malcolm Brogdon was a good pickup. I think he's going to be a very good sixth man. But the one concern I have for Boston is that they don't have a backup big. Like, I want them to go out and get a backup big and some more depth at the wing. Like, Grant Williams is good, but he's inconsistent. Right now, their bench looks like Malcolm Brogdon, Derek White, Grant Williams, and Payton Pritchard.
Gallinari?
And Gallinari, you're right.
I like
but
that.
that's not a bench that I am overly ecstatic about. I think Payton Pritchard is most likely to get dealt for something, for hopefully a backup big and maybe like a second-round pick or something. But
I don't feel like it's
Brogdon-
a necessity for
Pritchard
the
is definitely in their plans. for the
Absolutely.
future. I don't think that they're moving off.
I
the
think so, too.
Brogdon said, I'm looking to win a championship. That's actually it. In the past, I've worried about stats and numbers and all that. I'm going to Boston and not worrying about that.
Respect.
What he's saying is true, because the reason he went to Indiana was not only because of the pay, because the Bucks could have matched it, was because he wanted to have his own team and run the show. If he would have stayed in Milwaukee, he's probably an NBA champion right now. But the fact is that he did
That
it,
team
and
would've
now,
been nice.
and now Boston, sixth man, this is good. But I don't think they're better than a healthy Milwaukee Bucks team. What about the Heat? If they get Donovan Mitchell, nope, the Heat are better in my opinion. And what you said first,
I don't love this. You guys keep talking to me, not just you guys. I keep hearing this Donovan Mitchell to the Miami Heat, and I don't love it. And the reason why I don't love it is because I look at how the Miami Heat's offense is generated. Very much like San Antonio, very much like the Golden State Warriors, where it's a lot of action off the basketball. Donovan Mitchell is a volume shooter who's below average on defense. And that's the exact opposite of what the Miami Heat are. and I don't know how well he fits into what they're doing. They don't need a guy that's just going to jack up shots. The thing that bothers me the most, go ahead, Rib, because you look like you're chomping
I know,
at the
I
bit.
got something to
No,
say.
go ahead. I want to let you finish. And then,
Well, because it looks to me like what they're doing in Miami is they're right there. They're not that far. Now, I know who Pat Riley is, and Pat Riley's not just going to run it back. No, he's not going to do that because Boston got better. I'm not 100% on board with Brogdon because of his injury history, and add that to the fact that I'm not loving him playing behind Marcus Smart because I think that could very well screw with Marcus Smart, with his psyche, because that's always been Marcus Smart's team. So now I got a guy playing behind me who's pushing me for minutes, as opposed to a guy, which I also think that they could start Brogdon at the 1 and put Marcus Smart at the 2. They could also do that. But to get back to my point, everyone's talking about Donovan Mitchell in Miami, and I just don't like it. And I don't like it because of what they have there. And I think that the dynamic that he would bring, I think that he would screw with that.
Isn't that Tyler Hero though already? But just a worse version.
I don't see why. And not only that, I think Tyler Hero I think he's a little more efficient than Donovan Mitchell. Because again, Donovan Mitchell is a volume shooter.
Yeah.
And not only that, we're talking about a guy in Tyler Hero who works for what they're doing. Your role is you come off the bench, your buckets, and I need you to just be solid defensively. How do you have a guy in Donovan Mitchell who's played with arguably the best rim protector in the last 15 years on your team, and you never make the all-league defensive team, not one time? When I'm playing with a guy that good defensively, and they're actually hunting me on defense. They're coming after me. Meanwhile, I'm going to go to Miami, where their stamp is a lot of the stuff that Miami does is in transition. A lot of the stuff that they get is steals, rebounds, and quick outlets. A lot of that stuff works. But now I'm going to get this guy who comes in here, and he's nothing more than a volume shooter. I don't know how well that works with us if I'm Miami.